safer hospitals certainly is I'd say one of my hobbies. But I'm going to focus today on real threats, the big threats to elder patients when they go into hospital. You won't like me saying this, but I've been involved at various times in long-term care facilities and helping them. And one of the things we always dreaded, and even in the community, we always dreaded one of our elderly people going to an acute care hospital, because they always came out worse. And it's a sad truth. So we're going to talk about that and what we can do in a concrete way with bits of hardware to maybe reduce those risks. First of all, an advert for where I come from. Toronto Rehab we've built now over the last 10, 12 years, and we are proud to announce that it is now the top rehabilitation research center in the world. And we say that not because I want to instill any sense of complacency or arrogance, but I'm trying to instill a sense of pride in Toronto and at the organization, so that every maintenance person, every housekeeper, every researcher, every physician who comes into the place says, aha, I'm coming somewhere valuable, and it's my job to make it even more valuable. Of relevance to this presentation, we have 200 graduate students, 100 now doing their PhDs. We have about 56 postdocs. I'm not sure these numbers are quite up to scale, but the important thing is that it's extremely multidisciplinary. And I don't mean that someone from nursing works with someone from physiotherapy. I mean that someone from mechanical engineering works with a nurse and they look after a patient. We have a third of our graduate students are engineers or computer scientists, a half for every kind of discipline you could imagine associated with clinical care, and then the wedge that's left are health management and now innovation management, because we launched a lot of spin-off companies. Our mission is to solve problems, and that may seem rather trite to you, but it's fairly unusual for a research institute to have a mission to solve problems. It's usually to do research, and research only takes us halfway. So we stick with things until the solution is applied. We stick with policies, we change regulations. We've changed the Canada Building Code this year, for example, which will have a big impact. If we develop a treatment, we don't count it as a treatment that we've developed until it's available in other hospitals. If we develop a product, we don't count it until you can go and buy it. So we take it the whole way. One of the tools that we use is simulation. We have now 7 simulators, and we're building an 8th. And they're all quite sophisticated, but they're a way of getting quickly from the laboratory to the real world. We don't have to ask someone's permission. We can do things in a safe way. We can create a challenging environment in those spaces. And our spaces include everything from winter, for example, with ice and snow that can be moved around. We can take you for a ride in winter, dreadful winds. We're about to build the world's most advanced driving simulator to study the environment for older drivers, amongst other things. But I'm going to talk about Care Lab, because we're here talking about hospitals that are better designed to look after the interests of seniors. And that's our number 2 simulator. We have Care Lab, and you can walk around and you can look around down from above. Care Lab is deliberately smaller than most patient rooms. That's quite deliberate, because when you invent things mechanical, particularly to help caregivers provide care and help patients enjoy a better quality of life and a safer quality of life, they tend to get in the way. They can be worse than the problem was in the first case. So creating a smaller space is more challenging for us, and it also helps us prepare technologies for other countries, particularly in the Far East. So that's looking down on Care Lab, and let's first of all think about one of, I think, the biggest threat. When you go to hospital, I heard Alison talking about it. I only came in halfway through a presentation. But being left in bed is where everything goes wrong, and you don't need me to list the things that start to go wrong when you're left in bed. One of the reasons that being left in bed happens is that there's nothing to help you get out of bed, and if the people are off at lunch or whatever, you just can't do it. So here's a rather simple product we've just developed. It's deceptively simple. It's a pole that you can put by the side of the bed, and it's really sturdy, and it's got a really good grip, and you can pull yourself upright. But what's interesting is that it doesn't have to be there all the time. So behind every bed, and it's only just on the market, we were the first customer, so we've installed it in 40 beds in our hospital. Behind every bed are 2 tracks, and this thing can be clipped to the 2 tracks, so you can put one on the left, or one on the right, or one on both sides, or none at all. And it's there, and it's rigid. This is it in one of our stroke wards. Imagine, you can of course put 2 up, and you can put a crossbar between them, and you can put exercise equipment and things on as well. Very simple. It's called Stand Easy. There is a website. I can't remember what the title of it, but it's Easy something, but you can find it through us if you're interested. I'm going to digress slightly from the hospital to the home environment, because we all want to, as Alison shows, we want to get them home. And if you become dependent on things to get in and out of bed, it's good if you can transfer them to the home. So here's a bit of history. This is something about 30 years ago. My team was the first to develop a portable pole that you could squeeze between the floor and the ceiling. And it's still one of the most useful devices to help people become mobile. You're not always by a wall where you can grab a grab bar. And I have 4 in my home and 4 in the cottage, and we've had various problems in the family, as every family does, and they're about the most useful thing you can have to get up off a couch, out of a bed, off a toilet or whatever. But I always dreamed, wouldn't it be neat to be able to put together a gigantic Lego kit so that you could snap poles together so that when Dad comes home from the hospital, you could quickly recreate a safe environment as a temporary environment without bringing in a construction crew. So we've done that now. There isn't a website for this yet, although it is a product and it's about to be on the market. But here's set up for Dad, who's just come home, to get out of bed and walk all the way around to the toilet himself. Right? So we can snap this together. And then you say, well, isn't that a bit of a barrier? Don't you have to do the limbo to go underneath it? So there is Mum. No, they're all pinned together. You can hinge any of them apart, drop them or swing them out of the way to do the vacuuming or whatever, and move from place to place through it. Dad only had a handrail on one side of the stairs. Up until the moment that he was discharged, the family was worried sick about whether he was going to survive. We've all been in those situations where, you know, he's had an aneurysm or he's got a stroke or he's got a whatever. The focus has been on his survival. Then all of a sudden, Mum gets a phone call. Your dad's coming home tomorrow. And she thinks, oh dear, she says. I'm happy to have him home, but how am I going to get him up off the toilet? How am I going to get him dressed the day after and moving around? And how's he going to even manage the stairs? Because she's attended one of our talks and she's realized that a handrail is essential for the stairs, but 2 handrails is actually essential, because if you have 2 good handrails, you actually halve the number of accidents. 1 is not enough. 2 does it. So here we put one down the other side of the stairs quickly to get over this situation, and until one day we can put in a permanent one, perhaps. This business of mobility, my God, I could talk a lot about the need for us to be sensitive to issues in mobility. Not just falls, but definitely getting up out of bed, getting up out of chairs. It's a bit like flying. The analogy I use is that when you're going to go to fly somewhere, the critical moment is the takeoff. The engines are at full thrust. Everyone is strapped in. The tray tables are away and all that sort of stuff. And I can tell you, because I do a lot of work in flying, that if something goes wrong at that moment when you're taking off, there's not a lot of spare capacity. There's not a lot that can be done about it. It is really, that's where things are a problem. Once you're up in the air, you've got time to do all sorts of things. You can glide down, you can do lots of things. That's the moment. So the getting from A to B is not the problem unless you run out of fuel, which is true if you're walking, right? But the getting to A is the critical thing. So one of my pet peeves in hospitals is looking at chairs, getting up from chairs. As Alison said, we want them up either sitting or walking. It's better than lying in bed. Now, last night I wandered down to our geriatric unit and I was rather pleased. I thought I was going to take some pictures of some really lousy furniture, but actually we did get some good furniture. But if you look carefully, you'll always find areas of improvement. Here's a range of seats that are in the day hospital there. Some of the patients really love the higher seat. They've had a hip replacement. They don't have to put an extra cushion underneath. They don't have to flex as much. And some of them like the wider seats. But look at this, the silly mistake that they made with this one chair here. Look at the bar across the bottom. It actually bulges forwards. What on earth were they thinking? If they needed a bar to make their legs stronger, surely it should curve backwards, because you know as well as I do that if you want to stand up, you need to put your feet back underneath you, right? If you can't stand up with your feet way out there, you can't launch. You've got to put your feet back under so that you can get your center of gravity above your feet. So little things, a selection of furniture and stuff we need to pay attention to. When I was at Sunnybrook, where Barbara works, I was frustrated because I would meet patients in the halls collapsing, resting, leaning up against things because it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So they wanted to walk around, but they couldn't get around unless they got a volunteer to come with a wheelchair. And it was always an old crappy thing with the leg rests falling off and the armrests falling off. And you couldn't get it from the car park and stuff. So we came up with a thing called Staxi. Now, of course, Sunnybrook abused it. They stayed with the original prototype for 15 or 20 years, way after it had worn out and stuff, but they've replaced it recently. But what has given me satisfaction is that every airport I go to in the world has these now. Pretty much every hospital in North America and now in Europe is having them. And this is, I went to the website and see now you can get a Patriot Chair. And depending on where you fought, you can get for different VA hospitals, different kinds of chairs. And the idea of this thing was that you still need, you're still using a caregiver, but your caregiver isn't struggling with an old rickety chair. Doesn't have to get permission to get it. These things can be outside. They can be in the car park. They can be anywhere. It's easy to get in and out. You can raise the armrest. It accommodates big people. In fact, the one down there is 1,000-pound capacity. Believe it or not, we've made 1,200-pound capacity chairs, and they've been sold to Fiji, 30 of them. So all sorts go out. But what made this thing take off is the hospitals were slow to pick up on this. You can put the baggage underneath. You can put the chart and your handbag in the back. Hospitals were fairly slow. We went to Atlanta Airport and put in 300 to 400, I forget, 350 of them in Atlanta Airport. Delta Airlines loved the effect, and it just took off. So there's versions in airports all around the world as well as in hospitals now. But it requires a caregiver to take it. But at least now, the caregiver who comes to the car park can have the dignity of pushing their relative around, and they do not have to be trained to put the brakes on. The brakes are automatic. So again, you don't have an accident. The brakes are automatic. Let's change pace to another big risk, not just to our seniors, but to everyone in a hospital. This is a picture of Semmelweis's ward in Vienna in 1830-something. I've forgotten what the date is. But you may remember the story that they had 2 obstetrics units in this hospital in Vienna. One was run by the midwives, and looking around, you're going to be happy this is the one that won. And the other was run by the doctors. And they would admit patients on alternate days. And on the doctor's day, they had to go and try and corral them to get them in. And on the midwife's day, there was a lineup. And the reason was that 30% of the patients who went into the doctor's ward died. They didn't come out. 1 or 2% who went into the midwife's ward died. And the problem was, of course, that the doctors were going and doing the autopsies pretty much in the next room to find out why the patients had died the day before, and then coming in all yucky and helping give birth to the next baby. And this was before the theory of bugs was investigated, before even the microscope came. At the moment, in North America, we kill 1,000 patients a week because of poor hand hygiene in hospitals. It's the equivalent of 2 fully loaded wide-body jets crashing and killing everyone every week. Now, this is the only picture I've got of a fully loaded jumbo jet crashing, and unfortunately this was a cargo jet with only about 5 people on, so it would be a huge number of cargo jets crashing every week, but 2 fully loaded. Around the world, 60. So that ought to draw attention to the problem, you would think. So what is the problem? Well, you get all these really oversimplified, somewhat nasty sometimes, suggestions that it's lazy staff, that they don't care. But you know that's not the case. We'll find a bad apple in every crowd, but in general, that's not the case. It's busy. It's tough to remember to look after your patients and to wash your hands. It's tough because you probably have to do it 100 times in an 8-hour shift. And I forget. I go around, I forget that I should be washing my hands, particularly when I leave a room. I forget. When I'm going in, I think, I better protect that person, but I'll come out carrying things. And you know, someone's made a mess of the bed, and you pick up all the sheets, and you're leaving the room. Do you put them on the floor, wash your hands, and pick them up again? I mean, it's not that simple, right? So we've been working, because it's been a pet peeve of mine for a long time. Can we do something to help remind us to wash our hands? And what will that do? So we have this little badge that we wear. And we've done trials and published the results, and it about doubles the hand hygiene performance of willing people. But it doesn't do it in a punitive way. As you go round, you just wear it somewhere, and you go into a room, or you leave a room, and you haven't washed your hands, it vibrates tactfully. It doesn't buzz, it doesn't scream, it doesn't go red, it doesn't embarrass you, it vibrates. And all you do is you go to unless you're doing a CPR or something, if it's relevant, you go to a hand wash dispenser or a soap dispenser at the sink, and you press it, and your badge glows green. And everyone's reassured, and you're reassured that you've washed your hands. If you do that before you go into the room or before you leave the room, it doesn't vibrate at all. And we've now got a trial going with 860 of these in 7 institutions, because I want to know it works in every kind of institution, ranging from emergency departments to intensive care to rehabilitation, medical and surgical units all over. Big trial. And all it has is it has a little thing like a smoke detector that has batteries in it. It's ever so easy to install, low cost. Just put above anywhere that you want to monitor. As you go under it, the little eye in the top of this device sees where you are. And if you wash your hands first, when you use any type of dispenser from any company, it just gets adapted. So when you squeeze the trigger, it emits a signal also, a light signal. Both of them are light signals, infrared signals, and it reassures the device you've washed. This is in my office corridor. We have one where we play around with the software, but as you come onto the unit, you just take your badge from this rack. At the end of the day, or any time, you put it back anywhere into this rack. It automatically recharges. It updates the statistics. We display the aggregate performance of the department on the screen above. There's all sorts of detailed information available, but we don't want to embarrass anyone. We want to encourage people. If you want to go into detailed analysis of whether you should shift the labor force, refocus, or whatever, you can do that. But the important thing is not the auditing function. The important thing is the reminding function. With the instant reminder, you then get it, and you just do it. As I say, we've got big trials. These are some of the units ready to go out for recharging. A third area of risk for working in hospitals. Remember, it's not just the seniors themselves that we're concerned about, it's the caregivers. As you know, that nursing is 3 times as dangerous as mining. There are 3 times as many occupational injuries in nursing as there are in mining. One of the big problems is we've got used to the idea of overhead lifts, but we don't know how to use them properly, because in order to lift someone with an overhead lift, we still got to get a sling under them. And you can rent a forklift truck. It's quite tough to use. And if you go around and people see those tines coming to them, they're not happy. It's not senior friendly. So what can we do about that? So this is what we've done, and this will be on the market very shortly. I keep saying that. It seems to take a while to get to the market. But we've tested hundreds, and I would say thousands of times. And it doesn't matter how heavy the patient is. We can do it under an 800-pound patient with no effort at all. We just point and shoot. And we shoot as many straps as we like under the patient. And then we don't lift the patient through the sky. We lift them an inch and we can put a sling under them. I wouldn't want them falling through the straps. But we can lift them a bit, change the sheets, put a bedpan under or whatever, move them up the bed. One person can do it quite comfortably. There is no friction. You can remove the strap by pulling on one end. It doesn't rub. You don't feel it. It turns inside out and it comes out easily. So, very easy. Now, typically we would, for big people, we would put many more straps, about 5 or 6 straps under. And it's kind of nice because you can talk to the patient, you know. You don't have to wait for 8 other nurses to come because you're going to lift 800 pounds. You can chat, and one person can connect them up, and everything is gentle, and it's not 1, 2, 3, heave, ouch. It's gentle. Makes the whole experience much nicer. I can't see where we are there. I think we better move onwards. So I was reminded when I thought back to Sunnybrook about some battles that I fought at that institution, and one of them concerns stairs. And this is another of our simulators. This is called Stair Lab, and in Stair Lab we have whole stairs, and we throw people off the stairs, and we do all sorts of testing of the effect of the depth of the step and stuff. And the change we've just made to the building code will save 39 lives and 33,000 serious accidents in the first 5 years of implementation. So the return on investment of some of this research is huge. Again, I'm going to move very quickly. This is a picture of the stairs at Sunnybrook in the front entrance. Now, I want you to be sensitized to this because I've fought battles against architects as well as helped architects over the years and have lost many. I lost about 60% of this battle. Originally, it was going to be an almost transparent staircase with open treads, so you could see right through. So it would look nice and dramatic. And you would come in the front entrance, and you would go up this glass staircase, and you would turn the top, and you would go across, and you see at the back there, can you see my mouse? See that bridge there? Can you see that? Is my mouse showing? All right, anyway, there's a bridge at the top right there. That glass bridge leads into the vertigo clinic. And they never saw the absurdity of this, right? Never saw the absurdity of this. After a lot of battles, I got them to make the glass less transparent and to at least fill in the riser, because that's ridiculously dangerous. But then someone thought, let's put a waterfall in. And it's called Soothing Waters. See that waterfall down? On the left there, that grayish block is running water. And it's to soothe you. Well, again, I mean, really, come on, guys, wake up. You got to take an interest in your physical environment. You know, for one thing, if you're feeling that your bladder's getting a little full, there aren't very many toilets around this area. It's actually quite difficult to find one. And so feeling that discomfort on the stairs is not a good idea. But the distraction of this sheet of water moving down next to a glass staircase is ridiculous, right? I took my wife for a checkup. She has some problems. Only 2 months ago, she fell on the stairs, right? She fell on the stairs. She first of all fell getting off the physician's couch. They had a stool there that moved away as she got off, right? And then she fell on those stairs. Lots of people fall on those stairs. It is loony. And it's about time as clinicians, with your sense about these things, you take some control of the environment. Because it is really, really unconscionable, some of the things that are going on. I have to finish. I'll finish by going through the exit doors at Sunnybrook. We fought so hard against these, but we were told this is the efficient way. A big revolving door. Apparently the first night they turned this thing on, a kid got stuck in it, got his arm stuck in it. A security agent trying to help him got injured, and it's never really worked since, has it? For a time, of course, our elderly patients were really worried about it because this thing with glass all over was revolving. So to solve the problem that there was a glass partition halfway through, to make it more obvious, they put plants across the middle. So now we have plants revolving, right? It's something that every older person with a little bit of a cognitive or sensory problem is expecting to see at the entrance of a hospital. So ever since, virtually ever since, it's barricaded. And you go in through a little door to the side. My time is up. I'm very conscious of that. I'm very happy to take questions. We can talk for ages about these things.
Thanks so much, Geoff. I knew you wouldn't disappoint. So we're open for questions for Dr. Fernie.
Yes. Yeah, the question was affordability. Yeah, very much so. And in fact, my students, we emphasize going into socially challenging environments because it's more difficult to solve these problems when you haven't got the money. No question about it. We try. We try to design things that are affordable. There are disappointments. The kit, the Lego kit that you saw, Move Easy, it's a higher price than I would like. I'm putting a lot of pressure on the idea of rent to buy, being able to rent these things and clip them together and not have to have construction crews there. It's tough. I was talking about commercialization yesterday. If you want to sell something for $100, and if you sell it through a pharmacy, for example, a home care pharmacy, they will justifiably take 60% off the top. So of that $100, they'll take 60. So you sell it to them for 40. If you're a little company and you have to engage a middleman, a distributor, they'll take 35%. Takes you down to 27. As a manufacturer, to keep your board and your investors happy, you've got to make 50% anyway, maybe 60%. So you've got to produce the product for about $12. You've got to manufacture the product for about $12 to sell it at 100. So there's some really tough realities in this area. We do what we can. We work really hard to keep the cost down in a variety of ways. But yeah, it is a cost. But then, you know, so is everything else a cost. And you have to rank what's important and what the cost of not providing the technology is. And of course, a lot of the things that I'm talking about have no cost at all. Those stairs could have been made cheaper. The chairs that I showed wouldn't have been any different if they just bowed in instead of out. There's a lot of things you can do. The stand easy. Yeah, it's a bit of a cost, but you can share many of the poles around several beds, and over the years, you know, the cost recovery is huge.
I have a question for you, Geoff. Things are maybe a little bit different in terms of awareness at the hospital level and in terms of design, but the lobbies and the public, the immediate impact of the front lobby seems to still be a challenge in terms of getting senior-friendly design principles in there. Looking back on your experience with the battles that you have fought and some that you've won, what do you think is the best way to message things to people that are making those decisions? What should the people in this room take back with them when they go to their hospitals to give advice?
You know, architects and engineers, when they're designing environments, tend to intimidate a little bit. They tend to use flashy illustrations and diagrams and things that are difficult to interpret. So just say, hey, pause. I'm going to be looking after my patient. Let's just walk through a scenario. So my patient arrives and has a walking aid or whatever, and it has to go from here to here and can only go a certain distance, and then they have to go to the toilet, this, that, and the other. Walk them through the scenarios. It'll come to life. They end up making these mistakes because they don't know. And typically, designers are usually young men. The automobile is a particular example. I'm doing a lot of work on driving at the moment. I'm fully expecting a rash of accidents in the next few years, blamed on seniors talking to their cars. Because the interface in the car is becoming more and more complex. And it's the kids who are designing them. They're used to pressing buttons all over the place, and they want to hear the hockey score, and they want to find out, you know, where they're going to buy breakfast, and they want to talk to their girlfriend, and they want to see this, that, and the other continuously. None of these things are particularly important. For example, when you're turning left as a senior, you are being stretched a lot. You've got to be able to see oncoming traffic. You've got to remember to look for pedestrians crossing the side there. It's extremely dangerous. And the phone rings, right? And you're used to answering the phone, because if you don't, it's rude. So your car shouldn't allow the phone to ring. It should simply tell the people who are phoning, you're on hold just for a minute, just be patient. And then once you've completed the left turn, the phone rings, right? So there's a lot of things in life that require a sensitivity to these issues. And of course, the best is when an architect or a car driver or someone has a mum or a dad that get in trouble, and then they become more sensitized. But you have to help sensitize them, bridge that age gap.
Well, hopefully we'll learn from the mistakes of the past, and we can look forward to making positive changes in the future. So let's just thank Dr. Fernie once again.